All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, many people forget that Richard Sherman, the at one time outstanding cornerback of the Seattle Seahawks, and now just the pretty good cornerback of the San Francisco 49ers, was one of the first people to counter the slogan Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter. It happened about 4 or 5 years ago, and he pretty much has had a difficult time trying to overcome that statement or that counter statement to the term Black Lives Matter. Eventually, he got down with the team and fell down the woke rabbit hole himself. But as most people with even a modicum of intelligence do, they start to find their way out from amongst the cult and amongst the group, the mob per se, and begin to think for themselves according to rationale, logic, and reason. Now, you can be for your people and also be pro-rationale. It's very important that the so-called black men understand that the Black Lives Matter movement, or as I call it, the Black Lesbians Matter movement, has nothing to do with him whatsoever. It's an attention grab for Luciferian, desperately lonely, so-called black women, liberal black women, to find a way to garner more attention for themselves. And in the process of doing that, they'll welcome in all the simps, the super liberal Caucasians, homosexuals, lesbians, and transgenders that they can muster. But it's never going to have anything to do with the heterosexual so-called black man. They will use your plight to create energy for themselves, because we are the great energy creators, the so-called black man is. We are the alpha and the omega when it comes to the creation of creative energy. And they do understand that at one level, we are meant to be the judges and the quote-unquote gods of the world to come. That's why they have to feed off of the energy created by the so-called black man. But I'll be delving into that far deeper in another series. The point being is this: Mr. Richard Sherman has finally had a moment of true revelation, a moment of true awakening, and he's starting to wander out from amongst the imbecilic environment known as the Black Lives Matter movement. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Evan. Babcock is here. What's up? Renee is here.
Hello there.
Richard Sherman of the San Francisco 49ers is talking about the conversations he's had with other NFL stars about possibly boycotting games to help keep the spotlight on the Black Lives Matter movement.
Let me say this. No NFL player is going to boycott any of the games, at least not if they know what's good for them. Boycotting one NFL game is like boycotting 10 Major League Baseball games or 5 NBA games. And the NFL season will not stop just because 1 or 2 NFL players decides to boycott. Now, if there's another ritualistic removal of a low-level so-called black man, which is normally what the procedure is, they'll highlight the footage from an encounter between the police and a low-level, two-dimensional thinking so-called black man, and as long as it fits all of the requirements and prerequisites for a ritual pertaining to numerology, Kabbalah, gematria, etc., then they'll propagate that instance across the globe, across the nation, especially here in the United States, to try to fuck with the emotions of the so-called black man and everyone else who's looking for attention. Now, should that occur again, and it happen in a major way, I could see a certain amount of so-called black NFL players saying we're going to boycott NFL games this week. But 1 or 2 players will not be able to boycott the NFL. The games are too important.
And the movement for social justice, the movement against police brutality, and so on and so forth. You've seen it in the NBA, where a bunch of teams decided to not take the court during the playoffs. They ended up reaching an agreement with the NBA, and now they're back playing games again. And people,
they never boycotted shit. In order for you to boycott games, that means that those games would have to be removed from the schedule. All they did was delay a couple of days of NBA playoff games, which were made up starting from that Saturday. So it was all a big hoax. And really, it was a ritual to commemorate the god of the wokosphere, Mr. Colin Kaepernick, who plays the role of the number 7, aka Saturn.
Wondering if teams in the NFL would kind of follow the NBA's lead and consider boycotting games. Now, Richard Sherman, who's one of the biggest stars in the NFL, I mean, you know him from forever. He's also really smart. And a lot of people have a lot of respect for Richard
Stanford,
Sherman.
Stanford,
yeah. And he was asked about the possibility of a boycott, and I thought what he said was really interesting. Take a look.
If you told me that boycotting the NFL National Football League game would stop police brutality and stop the injustices that people of color deal with, then I would be all for it. I don't see how missing a football game is gonna keep police from killing black people.
It doesn't, Richard Sherman. So thankfully, you finally have been able to lend a bit of credibility to the notion that you're intelligent. It doesn't stop anything. All it does is build the profile of wannabe woke athletes who are trying to become popular on social media. People like LeBron James, Renee Montgomery, etc. People who are trying to be somebody off the back or off the notion, the energy of the quote-unquote black plight. And that will ensure that they'll be famous forever. It's almost like the concept of the ambulance-chasing lawyer. The ambulance-chasing lawyer knows that there will always be those situations because there will constantly be people finding themselves in situations that they can't get out of. There's always going to be some level of misconduct, whether it's out in the street or within a corporate office. So they're always going to have money flowing in. It's the same thing with these quote-unquote race mongers who normally are controlled by Caucasian liberals and sent in to fulfill a certain mission. Like, for example, this idiot attorney Crump. I believe his name is Benjamin Crump. And he's a high-level Mason as well. He's always wearing the purple tie. Every time you turn around and there's a racial situation, he's sent in to act as a controller. He tells the parents what to say, how they conduct themselves, to try to stir up sympathy and empathy from the mainstream liberal media and also from the masses at large, to once again foment that contention between low-level thinking blacks and the rest of the population of the United States that comprises what they call the quote-unquote majority, predominantly so-called Caucasians. And intelligent-minded so-called black people are left to sit back and say, there's something weird going on here.
People, I don't see that as the solution. I think people are putting too much onus on saying, hey, sports, stop our problems.
Too late, sir. You guys decided to get involved in societal issues. You decided that you wanted to be viewed as social engineers, agents of change, really agents of chaos. And now you've opened up that champagne bottle. You can't put the cork back in. The fizz is gone. So now those are going to be the expectations of these top level athletes. You're going to have to be quote unquote socially active, i.e. woke, i.e. a suitable pawn for the left. Bottom line.
It's like, hey, this can only go so far. If we miss 10 games, does that stop the problem?
No, it's not going to stop the problem. And it's also not going to stop you from getting called a coon if you refuse to boycott, because that's what's going to happen. You've placed yourself in that position. And now you're finally realizing that it was a little bit too much for you to bear. It's not what you bargained for, huh? It's very difficult to stop abstract problems like racism and things of that nature. As long as there's social media, there's going to be another situation where a so-called black man gets shot, and the mainstream liberal sports media could just send it across the airwaves and let people get upset about it.
Does that get something done? Do we make those kind of shots? Do we make those kind of calls? I don't think we do.
Yes.
Too late, sir. You've already involved yourself. You've decided that you're going to take over the kitchen. You're the new chefs now. So now you have to cook for everybody.
Fair to say that Richard Sherman is not going to be boycotting any NFL games, and if other people ask him for his advice is no, we should be playing. Renee, somebody who opted out of the 2020 WNBA season.
And nobody noticed because nobody watches the WNBA.
And NBA players who were in the bubble and boycotted games earlier this year. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are the point of the boycott was not to just rid the America of police brutality. It was to show America that you don't get your entertainment. We're not going to continually perform and act like everything's okay while it's not.
Right, but you're not in the position of power. The more games you miss, the more money you lose. The more vitriol you build up from the viewer, from the fan. Some people are not going to come back. And I don't think that they understand that. On the left, They're claiming that the NBA ratings are as great as ever. We know that that's a lie. That's an absolute lie, and it's going to show in the next collective bargaining agreement. That's why it's so important that they not piss off China, because they're planning on having the China money make up for however much revenue they've lost and pissing off the American citizens. And in return, China will continue to subsidize the NBA and assist the left in many of their agendas, which are Marxist in nature anyway. China cannot lose in this situation. Simple as that. And you have suitable pawns, useful idiots like Renee Montgomery, who are searching for some type of identity. She's probably 33, 34 years old, still does not know who she is as a person, and is trying to play a role. What's the most suitable, lucrative, and attention-mongering role that an aging liberal black female can play? Oh, I know, a social activist. Someone who claims to be about race, but is actually more about gender empowerment and gender supremacy. Underneath all the race talk, the liberal black woman is always, always, always about female superiority. Bottom line.
I think the point behind the boycott kind of got lost a little bit. LeBron and everyone knew when they...
Isn't it interesting? The message behind the liberal Negroes protests and boycotts always gets lost. I wonder why that is. Maybe because you have no solutions and you have no end game. Oh, I know. It's not up to you to come up with the solutions. It's up to the quote-unquote white man to come up with the solutions, because they're the ones who had your ancestors in slavery, right? Even though the vast majority of so-called Caucasians did not own slaves, or at least their ancestors did not own slaves. And that's a fact. The vast majority of so-called white people in America are the descendants of white trash. So who exactly do liberal Negroes expect to take up their cause for them and bring a resolution to whatever it is they're protesting about? They don't even know. That's how you know that what this is really about is trying to garner as much attention for themselves as possible. When it comes to this person, Renee Montgomery, she's already been able to parlay the George Floyd situation into a guest appearance on this show. I'm not sure if they're going to make her permanent. I've also seen her on shows on the NBA TV network. So being woke is lucrative in the short term, but it's necessary to keep the fire stoked by always replenishing it with new scenarios, situations, and video footage of black males getting shot by the police. It doesn't matter what they did. It doesn't matter what they did. As long as they had no gun, they can conduct themselves however they want. They can bring themselves into whatever type of situation of confusion they choose. As long as they don't have a gun allegedly in their hands, they can act as haphazard and irresponsible as they want, and there's never a reason for them to be held accountable for their stupidity. Now, we know from a two-dimensional perspective, there are situations that might be able to be handled in a better way. But if you're a so-called black man thinking three-dimensionally, you're always focused on how to avoid dumb shit. These people on the quote-unquote left, or the super left, the super liberals, they don't believe in accountability. And that means that they're bad for the so-called black man's future, because they're going to use you, and when they're done with you, they're going to toss you out in the trash. That's what's going to happen, because their true agenda is the empowerment of women, both hetero and homosexual, as well as male homosexuals and transgenders, as well as the pedophiles behind the curtain. That's their true agenda. Their agenda has nothing to do with the empowerment of the so-called black man. They do not even regard or respect us as human beings. They just want us for the energy that we create.
That game, Milwaukee Bucks, they didn't think, all right, we're going to set up this game. Is police brutality done yet? That's not the thought process. It's just shedding light. It's bringing attention to a problem.
Right, but who does not know that the police tend to afflict so-called black men more than anyone else? What is your solution? Are you guys in the process of drafting a bill that states that if a police officer is found to be committing a quote-unquote racist act, however, you would be able to certify that or qualify that he will be released from the police force? Are you guys conjuring that up somewhere? Like, what really is, the finish line for this?
And the best way to bring attention to it was that's how they saw it. So, I never thought, even when I opted out,
You should have stopped that "you never thought," because that's about the point in which you're correct. You never thought.
When I opted out, I never thought me opting out was going to fix a problem better than someone opting in.
Of course, because you have no clout. Nobody knows who the fuck you are. I've never seen you a day in my life until I saw this damn show. They keep bringing up how this broad opted out of playing in the WNBA. Nobody watches that shit. Not even lesbians watch the WNBA. They're too busy playing in it.
For me, it was that important, so I opted out. So I think it's a preference. I think it's a personal preference on how you see change happening. And
a personal preference. Yes, that's how societal issues get resolved, based on personal preference. I thought that you guys would have to come to some type of communal understanding so that you could bring forth something in an advisory role to be actionized, right? When you're trying to change something or resolve an issue, don't you get together with other like-minded people and maybe you draft something that you all can agree to, and then you bring it forth to your local senator or your councilman or what have you, and then you deliberate until it's ratified, hopefully? How could it just be about your individual feelings and opinions? What is that going to solve?
For Richard Sherman, he sees that maybe his biggest impact can be playing. However, I think the point that he's trying to...
No, I think that Richard Sherman understands that he stepped in it. And I think that he sees that many of these other athletes have stepped in it and that they're never truly going to get anything resolved. I think that people were amped up emotionally at the outset of the George Floyd protests. And now they see a few months down the line that, this is not going to end how we hoped, as usual. And all it's been is 1 year of major mind fucking. I mean, they've taken this so-called black man and black woman and just dicked y'all down mentally and spiritually this whole year. I mean, people ready to break down and cry, have psychological breakdowns based on what they see on television and on social media, because they don't put the Most High first. The so-called black men and women have been trained to worship themselves. Atheism among so-called black people is growing exponentially every year. And the mental psychoses that our people suffer is only going to get worse and worse because they're looking within themselves to solve these problems, and they're not going to be able to find the answers within themselves. Richard Sherman is smart enough to see that this is not going to end well. So he's trying to get out the car early, like Trey from Boys in the Hood.
It's not necessarily the point that the NBA and the WNBA and different people were doing. Sure. Everyone knew it wasn't going to be solved in a day.
Yeah, I think the most effective way for the players is to maintain and retain their influence and the money. And I think it's become clear that
these guys are full of shit and pea brains.
You can argue if this is right or not, but I think that a lot of sports fans have gotten to the point where they are frustrated because whether you could have been a Republican, a Democrat, center, sports were always it was a relief. It was a safe spot. It was a place where people could go and didn't matter your values, and you could enjoy what was happening on the field.
Sports was a place where people could watch an event and see the best and worst in man. That's the relevance of sports. You get to see who is competitive, who's not, who's going to persevere, who's going to quit, who's able to come up with great game plans. A game plan is like a microcosm for a life plan. Can you adapt on the fly? These are all things that we encounter in real life. That's the point of sports. The point of sports is not to have these meathead woke athletes trying to tell you how to feel and what to think. And speaking of that, Deshaun Watson, he better watch himself. He truly better watch himself because he's on his way to becoming the black Andrew Luck. The golly gee willikers dude who wants to make everybody happy. Now he wants to be a revolutionary and antagonize some of the people in the locker room who are not going to get down with the Black Lives Matter program mechanism. And he's not playing very well. He holds the fucking football too long. He's going to take a lot of hits just like Andrew Luck took. And it would not surprise me if his career is compromised, because he's so concerned with appearances on social media and being down for the cause, rather than making sure that he's focused on his role as a quarterback. Now, when it comes to Pat Mahomes already knows that he better have declared his allegiance to the Black Lesbians Matter movement, because had he decided to not do so, they would have found them old tweets with him making certain statements pertaining to the Trayvon Martin situation, and combined with this, it would not have looked good for him. So he knew what he had to do. J.J. Watt is someone who's trying to run for governor in 15 years. So he's like the football version of LeBron James. He's a wannabe politician / actor. But the point being is this, man. Nobody wants to watch football or basketball to see these pseudo-revolutionaries who don't understand anything. Just, play your sport, basketball, football, do what the fuck you have to do. And if you're truly passionate about what you claim you're passionate about, go speak to your local councilman, your local councilwoman, and get some legislation drawn up.
And I think, judging by what we saw last night, where the moment of unity, you had a lot of fans booing, I don't think those people don't want unity or prosperity for all different types of people. But I think that we have reached a point now where a lot of fans are frustrated that sports are not fun anymore. And
I'm so glad you said that. That is so great. Because that's the point then. So that is good, because a lot of athletes are frustrated with, I'm a black woman, I play in the WNBA, and people are trying to separate me from my identity. So...
Right, but no one watches the WNBA to care about you being a so-called black woman. These people are so confused. They say they're tired of racism, which basically means that you want to be counted not according to your quote-unquote skin color or your quote-unquote race, but according to your character. Right? Isn't that what one of their heroes, Martin Luther King, said? Allegedly, that's, their intention, to be viewed as colorless. Now they're saying that they want their color to be associated with who they are as basketball players. So in other words, you're just going to nag people into disregarding you.
If fans are starting to get frustrated, welcome to the black community.
No, speak for yourself. Welcome to being a toxic liberal Negro. Welcome to dwelling within the brain, the glass dome, with the little marble rolling around in there called their brain, of the toxic liberal Negro. Okay? That's all this shit is really about. Another attention grab. These are the same type of females. They can't keep anyone in their personal life, and now they're using the same tactics to get attention, in the public sphere. Look at Babcock's face on the left. Babcock is like, I hate this black bitch. I hate this black bitch. But I can't say it. I can't say it. Look at this dude's face, man. If looks could kill. Wow. But you know what? Everyone's going to learn very soon. Renee Montgomery, a lot of these Negroes who want to troll people into liking them, forcing them into capitulating to their whims, they're going to learn very soon. And they're going to be the most shocked ones. I can't believe it. Why is there war breaking out in America? All we want to do is force you to love us.
With everything going on in America, I'm glad you guys are too now. That is the point. So I'm glad you said that. That's good to know.
Everyone in the so-called black community does not feel the same about this nonsense, because we're not all trapped down the woke rabbit hole. We're not all stuck on social media getting mind fucked every day. These liberal women, they wake up, the first thing they do is look at their phone. Number one, to see what new piece of dick is texting them that morning. Number two, to check out IG and TikTok and Snapchat to see who's saying what about what. To see the newest clip of some so-called black man getting gunned down because he was high as a kite on something and refused to acknowledge the police's instructions, which is what 95 to 98% of these situations entail. And then they can go on the internet and act all revolutionary and continue to, fall deeper and deeper down that woke rabbit hole and not understand how to get out. Richard Sherman is trying to climb out.
I think obviously that's a great point. I think
no, it's not. She's full of shit.
Becomes when fans start turning off their TVs and people stop caring about the sports. Yeah. You've seen NFL, you've seen the NBA ratings absolutely plummet, and I think it's a real issue because, again,
I told you brothers 4 years ago that the Colin Kaepernick protest was to try to socially engineer the NFL into becoming a Marxist league, a culturally Marxist league. And then after that, they were going to use the new NFL and the new NBA to socially engineer society. I told you that's what they were trying to do 3-4 years ago. And they finally succeeded on the back of the ritualistic removal of the lunar bull, George Floyd, with Derek Chauvin playing the role of Mithras.
The influence comes from the fame and from the fortune. And when those things don't exist anymore, I don't know what it takes some of the power away from the player.
They'll be back. Look what happened during the pandemic when you didn't have sports.
The people will only come back once the political component that has been so firmly ingrained in sports is gone. Until then, they will not come back. There's a certain faction that will not come back. There's a certain faction that won't come back, period, man.
It's just sports will be back. Fans will be back. It's frustrating for everyone.
That's the same mentality, I'm telling you, brothers. That's the same mentality that the liberal woman has when she plays her games on her man. She believes that she can break up with the dude and then get back with him and he'll come back. And a lot of times they end up by themselves. The man does not come back. You cannot assume, and that's not how good business works. Or we can just continue to piss off the consumer and they'll come back because there's no real competition. And they look at what we do as a religion. They worship us as gods. That's how this person, Miss Renee Montgomery, is thinking. She believes that she cannot be replaced. Everyone can be replaced. Everyone.
Like, I mean, I'm frustrated. Like, for real. Like, I sat out.
Yes, you're frustrated with your gender identity. Even though you're glammed up here, you're lesbian. So you're definitely frustrated.
Out of season, I didn't plan on doing that. I didn't want to do that, but I sat out. So
no one cares.
Be back. Fans will be back. Fans don't like it right now because they want to sit and unconsciously watch sports, and athletes don't want them to be able to do that because on the outside of the sports world, it's pandemonium right now.
Right, but why is there pandemonium outside of the sports world right now? Do you even know or understand? But anyway, we'll see how things go, brothers. Peace.